Taking care of the physical part of addiction is the easiest. Now you have to deal with your emotional and your psychological issues. Hello, my name's Ken Seal, and let's keep talking addiction. Okay, so the last couple of videos we have been discussing the holistic view of addiction. Okay, basically looking at the fact that to really deal with addiction effectively, you need to take a holistic view, or the fact that there's 4 different parts to it, 4 different components. There's a physical part, an emotional part, a psychological part, and a spiritual part. Now, so far we talked about the the physical and the emotional part. Today we're going to talk about the psychological part. Now, most people would understand if we look at individuals who came from a traumatic childhood, okay? People that did not come from a healthy childhood, okay? People that were raised in chaotic environments, aggressive environments, punitive environments, okay? Inconsistent child rearing. They suffered physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. It's pretty easy to understand that these people would develop psychological issues that need to be dealt with. Now, unfortunately for people like this, one answer to deal with their anxiety, their depression, their stress, is to use alcohol or drugs. And the alcohol and drugs will make the problem go away, temporarily. That's the problem. Temporarily, it makes it better, but it will return. Okay? Myself, as an example, I grew up in an environment that wasn't the healthiest in the world. My parents were not terrible people. They were decent human beings doing the best they could. We don't need to go into all the details. The bottom line is I just grew up with a lot of anxiety. I would wake up every morning and that anxiety would be there, and it would stay with me as long as I can remember, as far back as I can remember, it was always there. Now, as a child, the way I learned to deal with this anxiety was with sugar. I would eat sugar, and the sugar would give me the same effect of some drugs would. It would make the pain go away. Okay, eating, but especially sugar, which is probably why I became a very large child. Later on, I found alcohol, and alcohol took the place of sugar, and in fact, it did make the problem go away. And so every day that I woke up in my adult life, I woke up with that knot in my stomach, with anxiety. And I wasn't a daytime drinker, but I knew that at the end of every day, I do what I have to do, but at the end of every day, there'd be that bottle of alcohol waiting for me. And I would start drinking whenever time I got home, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and I would drink until I passed out. And it made the problem go away. The stress and the knot disappeared. The problem was, the next day I woke up and guess what? There it was. It was right back. So it wasn't a complete answer to the problem. It was just a temporary fix. So there are a lot of people that grew up that way. I mean, I worked in the prisons for years, and man, I tell you, the stories that I've heard from these people about where they grew up and how they grew up would curl your hair. It's horrifying, the things that I heard. Going to school where they had armed guards at the front door and they had to go through metal detectors to get into it. Being afraid just to walk down the street at night. The richest person in the neighborhood was the drug dealer. Children with no parents, children with never met their fathers. I mean, terrible stories, and it's understandable that people like that have psychological issues that now need to be dealt with, and it makes sense that a lot of them turned to alcohol and drugs. But what about the people that grew up in healthy families? Quite frankly, there's only one real thing that a parent needs to do for the child, and that's to make the child feel safe. When I was doing this for a living, working with clients in the prisons or individually, I would always ask them the same question: is when you were a child and you were upset or afraid, who could you go to for comfort? Who made you feel safe? And unfortunately, especially in the prison system, And most people I deal with that have addictions, the answer to that is nobody. I had to take care of myself. I mean, I remember when I was first asked that question when I was in treatment. And I said, well, really? Well, what are you talking about? They said, well, if you're upset or afraid, could you go to your parents? And I go, no, are you kidding me? They're the ones that scared the hell out of me. And again, not because they were evil people. They were people doing the best they could with what they had. Okay? So the bottom line is, a lot of people don't feel safe. Okay? Okay. And that's your basic job as a parent, is to make your children feel safe. Oh, okay. So what about these people that grew up and could say, yes, when I had problems, when I was afraid or upset, I could go to my parents. In other words, the parents did a good job helping the child develop so that at some point in their life, they could leave the nest and be autonomous, take care of themselves, always knowing though, that if something went wrong, hey, my parents got my back. How do those people end up with psychological issues? Well, here's the problem. They may have been brought up feeling good about themselves with no basic emotional issues. However, once an addiction takes over, the way that person starts to behave is going to cause them trauma. It's going to cause them psychological issues. People who get caught up in addiction, and it doesn't matter if you came from a good family, a bad family, a rich family, a poor family, an educated family, a non-educated family, religious, non-religious, alcoholism and drug addiction is a equal opportunity employer. It doesn't care. So those people that came from good families and good childhoods, healthy situations, if they get caught up in addiction, they are going to start changing. And the main thing they're going to do is that they start to lie. They start to steal. They start to cheat. They start to become the kind of person that they never, ever would have believed that they would become. And after some time in addiction, their self-esteem, the way they look at themselves as human beings, becomes extremely negative. And they traumatize themselves just with the actions and the behavior that they take on in addiction. I've seen things people do that they would never believe that they would do. I did things that I never believed I would do. Quite frankly, I never was real happy with my father. And guess what? I turned out to be just like him. Cold, insensitive, narcissistic. But that's what my addiction did to me. Okay? So the point is that whether you come from a healthy childhood or a poor childhood, if you get caught up in addiction, you will end up with psychological issues. Now, how do you fix these things? And again, we're going to get into them in more detail, but just simply, there's something that we need to understand right off the bat about that situation, and that's this. Good friends, good input, a good church, a good minister, AA, they can help you with lots of things. But if you have major psychological issues, emotional, sexual abuse, physical abuse, major psychological issues you need to deal with, you need to talk to a professional person. I mean, I'm trained as a therapist. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I'm a certified addiction counselor. I used to do individual therapy. But when people came to me with major emotional issues, like especially, let's say, sexual abuse, even though I was trained in it, I said, you know what, maybe you need to go talk to somebody who specializes in this stuff, okay? Because these are specialized issues that you need training to help people deal with. This isn't just something you're going to get a friend to help you with, okay? So the bottom line is this. People that have suffered addiction and have become addicted to alcohol and drugs are going to have psychological issues, and that's something they're going to have to deal with, and you need a professional to help you with that in many cases. In fact, the interesting thing, and I'll leave you with this scary thought, and if you talk to most people with addictions, they'll tell you this, that taking care of the physical part of addiction is the easiest. Now you have to deal with your emotional and your psychological issues and deal with those things that have been haunting you for years and driving that addiction. And that's the hard part. It's the scary part. It's coming to grips with who you are and what you are and why you are. That's difficult. So that's all about the psychological issues that we're going to deal with. Next time we're going to talk about the fourth wheel in the car of holistic approach to addiction, which is the spiritual part. And when we say spiritual, we're not talking about religion. We're talking about the fact that we're all on a spiritual journey, and how do we all cope with that spiritual journey. So that's all I got for today. Hope it helped. I'll catch you next time. Hi, my name's Ken Seal, and this is Let's Talk Addiction. Now, if you like what you've seen and you think it can be helpful, and I believe it can be, I've been helping hundreds of people for years, hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll keep these coming. Thank you.